Good day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Tehran, Iran, on May 9th, 2025 for Reason to Resist. This week, while attending the Sobh Media Festival in Tehran, I was invited to meet with a senior official from Iran's Atomic Energy Agency. That invitation was also extended to a handful of other journalists and analysts from North America, Europe, and West Asia who are attending the Sobh Media Festival. Given the importance of the nuclear energy negotiations now being held between the United States and the Islamic Republic, I readily accepted this invitation. I and the other invitees were advised that the meeting would take place at an Iranian nuclear energy facility in northern Tehran. For security reasons, none of us was allowed to take electronic devices to the facility or to our meeting with the Iranian official. We were allowed, however, to take notes of what we saw and heard and to disclose to the public the information that the official shared with us. This report includes some photographs to our visit to the facility and our meeting with the Iranian official. Those photographs, however, were not taken by the foreign journalists or analysts who attended the meeting. Rather, they were taken by an employee of Iran's Atomic Energy Agency and then posted to the website of the agency. Our meeting with the senior Iranian official took place this week on May 6th. The official with whom we met was Behrouz Kamalvandi. Mr. Kavalmandi is an Iranian diplomat and the spokesman for the Atomic Energy Agency of Iran. On May 6th, the very day on which he met with us, Mr. Kavalmandi was quoted in the Iranian press as stating, quote, "Iran has the right to have peaceful nuclear technology. We cannot rely solely on fossil fuels for energy." Our meeting with Mr. Kavalmandi occurred at the Tehran Nuclear Research Center. The sprawling facility houses the Tehran Nuclear Research Reactor. We drove by the reactor as we were taken to the building in which we met with Mr. Kavalmandi. The Tehran Research Reactor was a focal point in the negotiations leading to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, which is the nuclear deal between the Obama administration and Iran that was concluded in 2015. Although the Tehran reactor was primarily designated for medical isotope production, its capability to operate with highly enriched uranium raised concerns about its possible military applications. The facility's ability to produce materials relevant to nuclear weapons made it a subject of international scrutiny. Ironically, the Tehran Research Reactor was supplied to Iran by the United States in the 1960s under something called the Atoms for Peace program. The reactor became operational in 1967 and initially used highly enriched uranium fuel with the consent of the US government. After the Iranian Revolution, however, the United States cut off the supply of highly enriched uranium fuel for the research reactor, which forced the reactor to be shut down for a number of years. Before we met with Mr. Kamalvandi, we were given a tour of a nuclear exhibition hall by an employee of the Atomic Energy Organization. The primary purpose of this tour was to help us understand why Iran needed nuclear energy and what steps Iran was taking to ensure that it would have access to nuclear energy for decades to come. At the entrance to the exhibition hall as we walked in, we found a memorial to Iran's leading nuclear scientists, 6 of whom had been assassinated either by Israel or proxies of the apartheid state. Prominent among those scientists was Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, an Iranian nuclear scientist who has been likened to Oppenheimer. He was murdered in 2020 during the final year of the first Trump administration. Iranian officials say the murder took place when a weapon using an advanced camera and controlled by a satellite zoomed in on the scientist while he was driving outside the Iranian capital. Tehran blamed the assassination on Israel, which has neither confirmed nor denied its involvement. During the tour of the nuclear center's exhibition hall, we learned the following. First, Iran has 2 operational nuclear reactors. In addition to the research reactor in Tehran, Iran operates the Bushehr nuclear power plant, which is situated 1,200 kilometers south of Tehran along the Persian Gulf. Construction of that plant was started in 1975 by German companies, but the work was stopped in 1979 after the Islamic Revolution. Then, the site was repeatedly bombed during the Iran-Iraq War. In 1995, Iran signed a contract for finishing the plant with the Russian Ministry for Atomic Energy. The work was delayed several years by technical and financial challenges as well as by political pressure from Western governments. After construction was again in danger of being stopped in 2007, a renewed agreement was reached in which the Iranians promised to compensate for rising costs and inflation after completion of the plant. Delivery of nuclear fuel started in 2007. The plant started adding electricity to the national grid and opened in September 2011. In addition to these 2 operational reactors, Iran is building 3 more research reactors and 3 more reactors for electricity generation. Its goal is to generate about 20% of Iran's electricity within 20 years. Although the Bushehr nuclear reactor was built by Russian experts and contractors, the newer reactors will be built, we were told, exclusively by Iranians. The reactors under construction are dispersed throughout the country, in part to make it more difficult for Iran's adversaries to destroy them all. I was surprised to learn as well that Iran has dozens of known uranium deposits and mines its own uranium. We also learned that Iran has over 200 centers for nuclear medicine. Nuclear medicine is a medical specialty involving the application of radioactive substances in the diagnosis and treatment of various diseases, including cancer. Iran is a major producer of more than 60 radiopharmaceutical products. These products have a short half-life, meaning that they decay quickly. Therefore, the Iranian government does not want to rely on the importation of these products because the transportation of these products from the jurisdictions in which they are produced would obviously be time-consuming. It was explained to us also that radiation has not only medical purposes, but industrial purposes. Moreover, irradiation can be used to improve food safety and extend the shelf life of foods by reducing or eliminating microorganisms and insects. After our tour of the exhibition hall, we were taken to a large conference room to meet and have lunch with Mr. Kamalvandi. Mr. Kamalvandi began the meeting by delivering a 45-minute presentation. Following that presentation, for another 45 minutes or so, we were invited to ask questions, and there were no restrictions placed on the questions that we could ask. At the outset of the presentation, Mr. Kamalvandi showed us a video clip from a recent interview given by Donald Trump. This is what we saw.
Your administration has had conversations with Iran. Is the goal of these talks limiting Iran's nuclear program or total dismantlement?
Total dismantlement.
That's all you'll accept?
That's all I'd accept. Okay. Now, there's a new theory going out there that Iran would be allowed to have civilian, meaning to make electricity. But I say, they have so much oil, what do they need it for?
Secretary Rubio has said that he would accept, or the idea is there is an openness to accepting peaceful civil nuclear program.
Well, that's what people, I didn't say anything contradictory. I said that people are talking about that. And this is something that's really pretty new in the dialogue. And I'd have to be, my inclination is to say, what do you need that for? You have a lot of oil.
So you want total dismantlement, bottom line.
I think that I would be open to hearing it. Civilian energy, it's called. But, civilian energy often leads to military wars. And we don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple deal.
Now, as you'll see from this interview, Trump and Rubio have given contradictory messages. While Trump insists that he wants total dismantlement of Iran's nuclear program, Rubio has opened the door to Iran having peaceful nuclear energy, subject to Iran giving up enrichment. Generally, uranium must be enriched to about 5% to be used in a nuclear reactor for electricity generation. So for Iran to have electricity generation from nuclear, at least some enrichment would be necessary. Rubio's suggestion is that the enriched uranium would be produced not by Iran, but by a foreign country that would supply the enriched uranium to Iran. The problem, of course, with this proposal is that Iran's nuclear energy system would then be totally dependent on the whims of a foreign government. In making his case that Iran must stop enriching uranium, Rubio has claimed that the only countries that enrich uranium are those that have nuclear weapons. Mr. Rubio is lying. As Mr. Kamalvandi explained to us, Germany and the Netherlands also enrich uranium, and they do not have nuclear weapons. In any case, why should nuclear enrichment be limited to those countries that have nukes? No country, especially the US and Israel, should have any nuclear weapons. Mr. Kamalvandi also addressed Trump's argument that Iran does not need nuclear energy because of its abundant oil. He stressed that Iran's oil resources are finite, and that eventually Iran will not be able to provide adequate energy to the country with oil alone. It is essential for Iran's energy security, he argued, that Iran diversifies its sources of energy. According to Mr. Kamalvandi, the International Atomic Energy Agency in fact recommends that countries derive between 8% and 14% of their electricity from nuclear generation. Also, Trump's argument about oil ignores the fact that nuclear reactors are needed for nuclear medicine. Trump also ignores the fact that there are other countries that have both large oil reserves and nuclear energy. 3 such countries are the United States itself, as well as the Russian Federation and Canada. Quite apart from all these considerations, Mr. Kamalvandi stressed that Iran is a sovereign nation, and no state, he said, has the right to dictate what sources of energy Iran may have. He pointed out that under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, to which Iran and the United States are parties, countries are permitted to develop and use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Mr. Kamalvandi read to us Article 4 of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which states as follows: "Nothing in this treaty shall be interpreted as affecting the inalienable right of all the parties to the treaty to develop, research, production, and use of nuclear energy for peaceful purposes without discrimination and in conformity with Articles 1 and 2 of this treaty." I repeat, without discrimination. Why should the United States and Israel be permitted to have nuclear energy and nuclear weapons, but Iran be deprived of the right to have nuclear energy for peaceful purposes? When Mr. Kamalvandi finished his presentation, I asked him 2 questions. First, under the JCPOA, Iran agreed to limit its enrichment to 3.67%. I pointed out to him that this was below the 5% threshold of enrichment, which, according to my understanding, is generally required for nuclear commercial energy reactors. I asked him why Iran had accepted so low a limit. He said that Iran had accepted this limit because the limit was to remain in place for only 12 years. After that, Iran would be free to enrich to a level above 3.67% to meet its domestic needs. My second question to him was this: according to media reports, after Trump had pulled out of the JCPOA, Iran had enriched uranium up to the level of 60%, which was well above the level needed for electricity generation and also well above the level needed for nuclear research, which is 20%. I asked him why Iran had enriched uranium to the 60% level. He mentioned that highly enriched uranium is used for naval propulsion. He referred specifically to the nuclear-powered submarines that are to be acquired by Australia from the United States. According to Mr. Kamalvandi, the uranium used by the reactors in those submarines is enriched to the level of 93%. Now, I found it quite surprising, frankly, that throughout this presentation, at least I didn't notice that at any point, Mr. Kamalvandi referred to the fact that the state of Israel has not only nuclear energy reactors, it also has nuclear weapons and is not a party to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. One would have thought that this would be a primary argument being put by the Iranians to the U.S. government. Why this was not a subject of discussion in our presentation, I do not know. But from my perspective, that indicated a rather high degree of diplomacy and restraint on the part of this senior official of the Iranian government. At a later point in the Q&A, I pointed out to Mr. Kamalvandi that Trump and Rubio were making contradictory statements about the kind of limits the U.S. government would accept on Iran's nuclear program. These contradictions, I suggested, gave a hint that the Trump administration was negotiating in bad faith. Mr. Kamalvandi, a professional diplomat, did not disagree with my suggestion that the Trump administration was arguing or negotiating in bad faith. Rather, he adopted yet again a restrained approach and simply responded, "Iran is ready for all scenarios." This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Tehran, Iran on May 9th, 2025 for Reason to Resist.